Let's talk about bloating. I feel like everywhere I turn, there's a new anti-bloat article or list of foods to eat to avoid bloating. And while yes, bloating can be a serious problem for a lot of people, the fact is it can be a normal part of life and it can actually be a good thing. So today I want to dive into the facts on bloating, when to be concerned with your bloating, and what's normal and what might not be. Then I'm gonna share some of your top tips for what to do when you're feeling full and bloated. I asked you guys on my Instagram stories what your tips were, so we're gonna share those at the end. I also looped in some experts in the area of gut health to give me their top tips and kind of get their take on it, so stick around to the end to see that. If you guys are excited about this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and let's dive in. And as always, guys, remember that this video is for entertainment purposes only. It is not to be taken as specific medical advice for you. If you do have questions about any of these topics for your specific medical needs, be sure to reach out to a provider. Okay, guys, so first of all, let's talk about why do we even feel full and bloated? So bloat can be kind of difficult to diagnose because it's not like other diagnoses where you can point to a lab marker and say, this is what you have. It's kind of more of this ambiguous thing. There are some tests like for different gut disorders that can point to the cause of bloating and whether that may or may not be the cause. One really common thing that I see is that a lot of people think that their fullness, like feeling full after a meal, is bloating. And the reason behind this is that we have been taught by diet culture that feeling full is a bad thing, when actually it's not at all. It means that your tummy has food in it to nourish your body. It's like we started to equate feeling full with being quote unquote bad. Totes not true. Having your stomach expand after a meal, I mean, you're literally putting food in it, is really normal, and it's a part of normal digestion. I mean, if you think about it, after a meal, you have more things inside your stomach, so it would make sense for it to be bigger. Now, however, you can go past the point of kind of that normal bloat and get to the point where it can be uncomfortable and debilitating. And again, when I talk about uncomfortable, I'm not talking about what diet culture has made us feel as uncomfortable, that feeling of fullness. I'm talking about more like pain. Many times the feeling of bloating is more a feeling of concern over what we might look like and what our larger stomachs might look like versus the actual discomfort. So a lot of times it can be where you have kind of more of that mental discomfort versus the actual feelings of discomfort. Just be very honest with yourself with that. Are you just feeling uncomfortable with feeling actually full because you've taught your body to not be full for so long? Or is it actually painful and uncomfortable? And again, diet culture has made it that we feel like we should never feel full and bloated, that our stomach should look the same all the time. Again, totally not true. And while yes, you can use some gentle nutrition in there to say, okay, what foods make me feel my best? You don't need to constantly be thinking of all of those kind of anti-bloat things that you should be eating that we see all over, I mean, like BuzzFeed, and I mean, literally there's just lists everywhere. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the reasons why might we actually have bloating and why are we feeling full and bloated. So many times when we're talking about bloating, we're talking about gas. Do you guys know that we pass gas up to 25 times a day? Yeah. And like I said, bloating is part of the normal digestion process. The foods that you've eaten are being broken down, and during that process, some of them do produce gas. And we can talk more about that later. Other causes of maybe feeling more bloat than normal could be because you're eating fast, because you're having carbonated beverages, or it can also be due to your stress. A lot of people call our guts our second brain. They're very sensitive to our overall health and well-being, including your stress. Stress in your mind, stress in your gut. So now we've talked a lot about how bloating can be normal, but how do you know when it's kind of taken to the next level and you might need to get that checked out? So your bloating may be past the point of quote unquote normal if you're feeling nauseous after every meal, you have constipation, or you have continual diarrhea, struggles, or you have that physical discomfort after eating. And like I said, be really careful with this one and be able to differentiate, okay, what is like pain versus what is just me getting used to the feeling of feeling full and bloated in a normal sense after a meal. That takes you to be honest with yourself. Is it physical pain or is it that mental uncomfortableness? uncomfortableness. You get what I mean. So I talked to my friend Amanda, who is a gut health specific registered dietitian. She's at Gut Health Nutritionist on Instagram if you want to give her a follow. She's fab. But basically I asked her, okay, what is the point where you would recommend someone kind of see someone like a registered dietitian to kind of talk more about this? And she was in agreement that if that is kind of a constant thing, like your bloating is constant and painful, and maybe it never kind of relieves itself, like if you like kind of a normal cadence of bloating throughout the day, you might feel it more after you eat a meal. If it's this really constant thing, you might need to talk to a dietitian. One thing that I have the girlfriends in my membership, the society, where we talk all about how to nourish your body in a way that you're not following food rules, is if you're feeling discomfort or you're wanting to eat in a way that makes you feel better, then I recommend using what we call a food and mood journal. And this is not a food journal where you're writing everything down that you eat. This is really just looking at, okay, can I correlate my bloating to maybe a specific type of food, maybe eating too fast? What is kind of the relationship? So if you have a day where you feel really bloated, you could then say, okay, let me backtrack and what were the common themes of when I felt bloated this time with when I felt bloated another time? And again, you're not writing down portion sizes, you're not writing down any specifics about it, but you're trying to kind of find a consensus. Does that make sense? Because sometimes there can be different things that can cause extra bloating. Cruciferous vegetables are one. For instance, if you are eating a lot of broccoli, broccoli is what we call a cruciferous vegetable. It's one of those foods that can kind of cause that gas as we go and eat it. So you might say, I feel extra bloated when I eat lots of broccoli or lots of cauliflower. That's another one. And you might say, okay, what would it look like if I swapped out my usual broccoli for maybe some carrots or some sauteed leafy greens? What would that look like? Would I feel better? The key with this is that you're kind of just observing it like a scientist without judgment. You are just really kind of saying, let me experiment with this and see. I would also be very, very cautious of any super restrictive diets, and actually so would Amanda. A lot of times these diets can be overly restrictive and it can actually do more harm than good. So just be very careful. And if you, like I said, do feel like you need to go a little bit more in depth with this, definitely talk to a dietitian. Amanda's a fabulous resource. Okay guys, now let's get into the good stuff here. So I asked you on Instagram what some of your best tips to handle. What do you do when you're feeling full and bloated? I wanted to know your tips, and I'm gonna give you 10 of them right now. And I'm gonna debunk some of them. Okay, the first tip for what to do when you're feeling full and bloated is to manage your stress. Like I said, there is connection between our stress levels and just our overall well-being and our gut. So pick just a couple different things of self-care that you can do to help manage that stress level. Tip number 2, and this was a really, really common one, was to wear loose-fitting clothing. And this one is legit, not only to help you not maybe be so judgmental of yourself, but also because when we wear tight clothes, this happens to me all the time. If my jeans are too tight, I get a really big gas bubble in my stomach. Put loose clothes on after you're feeling bloated, and avoid wearing too tight of clothes to actually end up not feeling bloated. Okay, I love this tip from Amanda. She says, think warm. And what she means by this, she says, have a warm compress, warm liquids, or warm thoughts. Warm liquids can be really helpful, especially things like ginger tea or chamomile tea. You can try a warm compress, like a warm water bottle, or you can make those rice packets. Does anyone else use those? Let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But those pieces of fabric that you have rice in them and you pop them in the microwave? That'd be fabulous. And lastly, I love this one. She says, think warm thoughts, because a lot of times when we're feeling bloated, all of a sudden our thoughts go to the negative, which is only gonna make your pain feel worse. So she says, try taking slow, deep breaths and think happy freaking thoughts. Amanda also talks about how constipation can go hand in hand with bloating. So there's a couple things you can do to get things moving. You can make sure that you're getting enough fiber. And by this, I mean you can include things like whole grains, like oatmeal. You could try some beans, throw some black beans in a quesadilla or something. I have a really great recipe for quesadillas. I'll throw it in the description. Or you could try some fruit or veggies. Those can be helpful too. You also want to make sure that you're having enough water. So that water is going to actually help the fiber get things moving. Tip number 5 is about about probiotics, and probiotics may be helpful for some people to improve their gut health. It's really, really important to make sure that you do your research when it comes to probiotics and making sure that you're taking the right probiotic. And what I mean by that is making sure that the probiotic strain that you're taking has been researched on your specific problem or symptom that you're having. You also want to check on the quality and the quantity of your probiotic. Quality, I mean you want it to be third-party tested, and quantity, you want to make sure that there are enough live and active cultures in there. Typically, studies have been done on probiotics containing over 50 billion CFUs, but a higher CFU does not always mean that it's going to be a better product for you. You really have to do your research on what you're taking. And if you're not sure, reach out to a dietitian. Also know that probiotics are not a quick fix. They are something that's kind of the more long-term gain and really just kind of allowing your gut to function optimally and have a really healthy gut flora. Movement is tip number 6. Movement can help kind of get things moving. And by this, be very careful that you're not using movement to burn off any of the energy that, again, of normal bloating we want to have, because we have more energy and food in our stomachs. But taking a walk or stretching, I'm not talking about like doing a real hard hit workout here. So a couple of you on Instagram mentioned digestive enzymes. And I asked Amanda about this one, and she said that digestive enzymes can be helpful for some if you legit cannot break that food or that part of the food down. But she says that her approach is if you're constantly taking them, then you need to kind of dig deeper and find out why that is. It's not just this kind of band-aid thing. And she also says that generally speaking, the average person shouldn't need digestive enzymes. So be really careful with that one, guys. Okay, this one's my own. I always have Gas-X on hand. To be honest, I'm not really sure how much I feel the effect of it, but the way Gas-X is supposed to work is that it takes those smaller gas bubbles that your stomach might be having and kind of puts them together in essence and allows you to pass them easier. Sometimes it just makes me feel better, like I'm doing something. There might be a placebo effect to it, but one from me. Improving sleep is tip number 9, and this one's really important because, like I said, our guts are really sensitive of all of the things that are going on in our life. And research has been done in this area of sleep and those who have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. One thing you can do to help your sleep is to reduce the amount of blue light that you are taking in at night. So things like our phones, scrolling in bed. This is because blue light has been shown to suppress melatonin by twice the amount, and melatonin really is released at night and it helps us sleep. Ideally, you should put your phone put it in your nightstand, keep it out of the bedroom about 2 hours before you're gonna go to sleep, or you could try blue light blocking glasses. My husband has a pair and he's obsessed. And tip number 10 is to know that bloating is normal, you guys, and to give yourself grace with it, and to know that one of my favorite phrases is nothing is permanent, it's temporary. Yes, it might be uncomfortable at the time, but everyone experiences it to a degree. Be kind to yourself and don't beat yourself up or feel like you did anything wrong. It's totes normal. All right, guys, I hope that these tips on what to do when you're feeling full and bloated was helpful for you, and maybe it can help you dive into, okay, is my bloating just normal bloating, or is it something that I actually need to kind of take a step further and figure out? Maybe do that food and mood journal, maybe reach out to a dietitian. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe to the channel down there. It really helps me to create more of these videos for you guys and show you how to make nutrition easy without food rules and to live your happiest, healthiest life. And with that, I will see you guys next week for another video. See you later, gorgeous humans.